that was my next thing I was telling people is like, I love nutrition. I got a degree in it, but when I woke up and do it, it's not the same as it was with beer, wine, and spirits. It was not this gut feeling, and just wanting to go out there and do it. And that's when I knew beer, wine, and spirits was my purpose, listening to my mind, my heart, and my gut on those things. And what I tell people is when you switch from that and your purpose, you have to go all in. You have to trust it.
Hey there, welcome back to another episode of American Snippets. I'm your co-host, Barb Allen, and today I have the great pleasure of sitting down with Jeff Bradford. You are going to want to tune into his story for so many reasons. One, off the top of my head, for me personally, man, I admit I love my wine, I love my tequila, I love a cold beer on a hot day or sometimes a cold day. And, the more training I get into, the more in depth I'm going after my own career. I hear people say, stop drinking, cut alcohol out, get away from the booze. Jeff is the other way around. He's like, bring it on, baby. So much so, he has followed his passion for wine, beer, and spirits all across the world. He is on his way to becoming the Anthony Bourdain of booze, man. And we cannot wait to get into his story. It is unlike anyone we have ever interviewed before because of what he's doing. I'm very excited to bring him to you today to talk about his new business, Beer, Wine, and Spirits, and the show Drink Destinations coming on out. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with us. And I'm glad we caught you in one spot.
Yeah, no, Barb, thanks for that intro. And I'm honored to be part of the amazing guests that you've had on the podcast. A lot of them are virtual mentors of mine. So I'm just honored and thank you for allowing me to be part of the podcast.
That's great. And that's one of the things that I love. There's no way I'd ever meet any of these people, including you, if we didn't just say, hey, this is what we want to do and go all in on doing it, right? So I think there's a lot that you and I can relate to in those stories. And for your story, you've met people you definitely would not have met if you did not go all in on. For people that don't know, I'll give you a quick backstory. Jeff has started Beer, Wine, and Spirits. It's where some people dream of retiring from their career, which we'll talk about what his career was. Also impressive, far from impressive, for 20 years. And then he retired from that career and just went all in, sold everything, traveled the world to follow his passion, bringing you this new show on culture behind the beer, wine, and spirits around the world. So let's talk about that. We'll talk about the point you retired, then we'll go back and talk about what you retired from. How's that?
Sounds great. I know there's a lot to talk about, right?
Yeah. So you were at this turning point in your life and you said, how old were you when you were like at that retirement point?
Yeah, so just like anybody that served you, I was a master sergeant. Right at the 18-year mark, looking at the list for sergeant major and really talking to people about, okay, I'm looking pretty good to make it on my first look based off of what I've done in my career. But that's a 6-year commitment. There's a lot more years onto it. And I went back and forth. It was so difficult for me at that time because I loved the military. I loved serving my country. I loved the camaraderie. I loved everything about it, playing Army, even at my old age, at the end of 30,
playing Army, yeah.
Yeah, playing Army, man. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But again, I just struggled back and forth at the end of my career saying, do I really want to commit or do I want, that's going to put me at, 46, 48, 50 years old, or do I go do something else? Go do something that's creative, go figure out what I want to be when I grow up, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, I was thinking about all these different things and ultimately it led to, and said, you know what, I'm going to go take a chance. I'm going to go I'm going to write down a list of my passions and go figure out what I want to do and do something for myself. And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up retiring after 20 years and going all in on the beer, wine, and spirits.
I love it. But did I see somewhere you wrote down your list of passions, right? And beer,
Yeah.
wine, and spirits was not necessarily number one. You like
Yeah,
ticked through your list
no,
first.
Barb, that's so great because a lot of people
Yeah.
think, like I just fell on this. It was like beer, wine, and spirits, and that was it, and that became my purpose. And literally, it was probably on the list. It was right around 4 or 5. I knew the biggest thing I knew was, and getting out of the, a couple years before getting out of the army, I know travel was a constant. I knew I wanted to travel the world, and I saved for that. I saved a lot of money to be able to do that. I was like, look, this is my gift to myself. When I get out, I'm just going to go travel and learn, dive deep into the cultures and customs. It's something that I've always loved to do. That was one of the things I loved about the army too. And but so when I was getting out, I wrote down a list of, I just going back to my childhood of what did I love doing, right? And I'm in my late 30s. I've done a ton of stuff. And that's the crucial thing about it is I've tried a lot of different things in, music to art to, this, that, and the other. So, and I just really looked and wrote down, like, what did I love doing? I got into travel was the constant. And, I started, my first thing I started to do was actually, it's pretty interesting. Those audio guided tours now that are apps. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. I'll go to a city and I'll figure out a tour around, for example, Rome. So I'll pick the Colosseum and write about it and kind of enter and hit waypoints and work, and figure out how to create a, travel app, that people can go to Rome and then listen to it walking around. And it was cool, great, at first, but after about a month, I was like, I'm not waking up with that fire and that desire to do it. And so again, I said, okay, let me go to the next thing. And so tattoos. I love art. I love tattoos. So what did I do? As I was traveling around, I said, okay, let me interview these, amazing tattoo artists, and take pictures of the artwork that they're doing and bring that to life. Again, cool. I liked it, but after about a month, again, it would just kind of died out to me. And I just was like, I wasn't waking up wanting to do that. Fast forward to a couple more things. I got down to beer, wine, and spirits. And one of the things about that is I was always curious. I was stationed with the 173rd Airborne Brigade in Italy. I was in Bamberg, Germany. One of the things I was always around, especially in Italy, right? I got there at 20 years of age, and there's a bottle of wine sitting in front of me. I look at the label, and I said, I was curious after I tried it of who made it and how it was made. Same thing if I had a beer or whiskey or so on and so forth. So I got down to that part of the the list of my passions, and I woke up and did it, and it was just like anything else. It was unlike anything else that I did before. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. I couldn't wait to do it again. And a month went by. And even through all the rejection, right? Because can you imagine somebody calling you up, a brewery, and saying, you want to come what? Learn the process? And so I got a lot of no's in the beginning. I got, for one yes, I probably got 50 no's. And it was interesting because I didn't care. I was like, I was such a high to get that one yes. And what was very cool, and I think, looking back on it, is those breweries and distilleries that said yes were the right ones. For example, I always tell people the very first brewery that said yes to me was in Belgium. Is Delirium. It's that pink elephant. They make a beer called Tremens. It's world, it's very, very popular beer. And they said yes, and that's what sparked everything. And again, I loved it. And 3 months went by, I loved it. And it was so cool because I couldn't wait to come back. And can you imagine sit down next to somebody like yourself and be like, oh, guess what? I just came from, Delirium and made this awesome beer. And they're like, Jeff, like, why don't you video this? And I'm like, hell no. I'm not, I've been shying away the cameras, for my military career. I didn't like it. I didn't like to be part of that. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And then I started thinking about it and saying, you know what, Jeff, you're retired. Like, do something that's, that your fear, that do something that's out of your comfort zone. Just go for it. Try it. You're never going to know what's going to happen. And then you're probably going to regret it. That was my thought process in my mind. And so I said, well, what the hell? I'll try it. So the first time I did it, I had a camera, and it's just, I'm trying to film myself, and it's shaky, it's horrible and stuff like that. But what I noticed out of that was, one, I captured a lot more than I did trying to write it down. And two, I was like, wow, this could be something actually, because I was getting the shots of the beautiful scenery of where I was traveling and so on and so forth. But one thing I knew, I was just like, you know what? I need to find somebody that can actually do this professionally. And then I was looking at videographers and so on and so forth. So, and yeah, the bug, I just caught it. It was I loved it. I absolutely was passionate about it. Despite the constant rejection and negativity, I couldn't wait to prove them wrong and go after it and do it again and again and again.
So you did say a lot of things there that I definitely want to touch on, a lot of points, and you broke down to, questions that I was going to have you, talking points I was going to have you bring up. I mean, between the rejection, the no's, the idea you had, the people saying you're crazy, that you can't do this, the list of things that you went through to discover that this is where you want to live. It's like dating, right? You don't necessarily need to marry the first girl you date, but you date around, right? And then you find out like, hey, this is the one. Like this, you just kind of know it when you're in that. It is a relationship with your work, it is a relationship, right? And so whatever you're doing, it has to feel right. When it's a good fit, when you're excited about it, when those hard times hit that you're going to want to push through because it's worth it. And you see the value in it both ways, right? So talk first so now you've left the military. And by the way, and you were in special forces. So it cracks me up when I hear you say like, and I see that about you. Like, I was so nervous to call this person up and I needed to get out of my comfort zone. Isn't that crazy, right? Because like you were special forces. I mean, you did things that 99.9% of the population would be way out of their comfort zone doing, that are way more, involved, much more risk than calling somebody up and getting a no, or going in front of a camera and feeling like you make a jerk. But it's funny, the things that people learn to be comfortable with and then not comfortable with, right?
Yeah. I agree, Barb. Like I spent 5 years in war, and I was
right.
fear of being in front of the camera, but yet I raised my hand to be the first one to go back and fight for my country. Yeah, I definitely hear you.
So it's just a conflict, right? So for anybody out there who may be like down on themselves, like, man, I'm such a jerk. Like I suck because I'm afraid to call this person. Dude, everybody has fear, right? You take this literal warrior who's gone out, in crazy situations, but he still gets nervous to pick up the phone and call someone or go in front of the camera. I just think that's a very universal human trait. And sometimes people think like, I can't accomplish this because I'm afraid and he must be so brave, but courage isn't, the absence of fear, right? It's the action to go through it. So I love that you pointed that out. I love that you're open about sharing that you're nervous about it. So, but you come out of the military and you're like, hey, everybody, I'm just going to sell everything and I'm going to travel the world and study beer, wine, and spirits. And people said to you...
Yeah. People are like, dude, what? First question is, from everybody's is, are you getting paid to do this? Right. Yeah. And I was like, no. And it was immediate, like, you're an idiot. You're crazy. This is wild. But again, I postured myself financially to be able to do that. And, it was a niche nobody was doing. So as I started getting it, I knew that it was going to take some time. I knew as I was getting all the rejections, I had to prove myself, or prove to other people what I was doing. So yeah, people thought it was nuts. And then when I told people I'm selling everything, I literally sold everything down to clothes that I can fit into a suitcase. And I said, I'm going to really become a student of beer, wine, and spirits, and really the culture of it. So I said, I'm gonna go live in a country for a month and deep dive into the world of beer, wine, and spirits. Again, another thing that people thought was absolutely crazy. And I still get people to say, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you just went and said, I'm going to sell everything and do that. And it's been absolutely the best decision for me. And I'll tell you something, the learning aspect of that is, I had a Harley Davidson, I had, the car, I had all this stuff. It was just such a weight off my shoulders but I didn't have to worry about, you know, the maintenance on my car, the insurance payments, and this, that, and
Yeah.
the other. It was a lot of weight. Now there comes some negativities too, like where the hell am I going to do my laundry, next, and finding the coins to be able to do that, right, and stuff like that. But ultimately, for me, that minimalistic approach. I mean, it was to the extreme by living in the suitcase, but there was a lot of life, just day to day stuff we don't even realize that was taken off my shoulders because of that.
I bet. I bet. And I think maybe that's part of the appeal why people are so drawn to it because deep down, while at one hand, we live in a time and in a country where there's so many opportunities and you can do anything, there's this like information overload and bombardment with that. And still people are, weighed down. Like we're here working out of a home office and a house and, you got the yard, the property, the kids, and most people in their 30s, whatever, they're locked in, they're tied down. So then you may dream of going to do what you do, but few people get to do it until they're well into retirement age, about to collect Social Security and they're budgeted down to the, to the line that they have to do this. So what you're doing seems a little far-fetched. And sometimes I think people may be like, oh, you're crazy, you can't do it. And see if you agree with me on this is because if they know that somebody can do it or it can be done, it points back the light on them like, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that, right? Like,
Yeah, no,
it sort of
it's funny, Barb,
invalidates their
because
excuses. Yeah.
yeah, I got so much, I got a lot of pushback because
Yeah.
again, it's not the social norm. Here I am, I'm in my late 30s and I'm getting rid of everything, right? And I'm going out to do
You're
this.
supposed to be
That's
getting married,
not,
having kids,
I,
starting a family, getting a
by the
nine to
way, I
five.
don't have,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have kids. I'm not married. It's totally against what
Yep.
we know is, again, what the social norm of the American dream, right? And I was so far from that. And people are like, wow, you know, the other thing I learned about traveling, and it's interesting because everybody loves to travel, right? I always see on, people's feeds, traveler, wanderlust, exploring and stuff. And those people that make a living traveling, they go out. I traveled in a suitcase for a year, a little over a year. And I could tell you that what I learned from that aspect was that as a human in our DNA is that we need a nest. We need somewhere to call home. I mean, it weighed on me. I mean, it literally mentally, it weighed on me probably about in month 8. The first few months are like, oh, wow, this is awesome. Uh, but it really weighed on me afterwards. I mean, there was nights where you're by yourself, and just living in somewhere where you don't know and people that you don't know, things that you don't recognize. I can tell you, it's really super nice to be go home, sleep in your own bed, throw your stuff everywhere,
Yeah.
and just relax. You know what I mean? And that was one of the things I learned, due to traveling that we need. We need that, and
You need
that's
to nest.
while people think it's so cool to go travel and stuff like yeah it's great, but do it for a year and a half and it'll weigh you,
And
it'll weigh
see
on you
where
a lot.
yeah, like even in the military when you're traveling around, you still
Yeah,
had that nest, that place to return to, that thing, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all you wanted
Yeah.
to do when you got back. Yeah, that's all I
Yep.
wanted to do, when I came back from deployments. It's just like just relax in the house for a couple of days at least.
Yeah. So where is home now? Let's start back then. Where did you grow up? Where's your home? You have parents, siblings. What are they doing? They think like,
Yeah, so
they,
I was born and raised in Southern California. I moved a lot, Barb. My mom was a single parent, trying to raise 3 kids. And we moved all the time. I probably went to, I counted, I think 17 or 18 different schools. I
wow.
mean, so it was absolutely wild. My mom worked to put a roof over our head. So a lot of times I was the one cooking the dinner for my younger brothers. And um, what I looking back when I was growing up is I was mowing lawns because my mom was taking us to Payless to buy those XJ900s for all
Oh,
you out there
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
that went there and and know that brand. And so I went out and mowed lawns because I didn't want kids. Kids are looking at you like, he's wearing that. I wanted to wear the Nikes like everybody else, and so
Mm-hmm.
I mowed lawns and worked. Paper routes and worked and hustled. Baseball cards. Would buy them and try to sell them and that's how my childhood was. But we moved around quite a bit.
Yeah. That's why props to your mom. I know, like I had to
Yeah.
raise 4 kids on my own, 4 boys, so I'm like a kindred spirit there with your mom. And I know that that's tough. So, and I put that on my kids had to do a lot of that too. They had to pick up the slack and drive their brothers around. And, couldn't go to practice and birthday parties because mom's strung out, but it
Barb,
gives you, huh?
Barb, no,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, and to your kids, like when I was their age, I looked at it as I was like, dude, this sucks. Like
Yeah.
everybody else's parents, like what am I? Why am I cooking? Like I'm a freaking kid, and
Yeah.
looking back now, like I wouldn't trade it for the world. There were so many life lessons and points that I learned, and just especially who I am now, especially the entrepreneurial side of things, and that I took for granted, right, as a kid back then,
Right.
that I'm so thankful for now, and again, props to those single moms out there. Props to you, Barb. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, but look at you go now, right? And now you're off and about. Was your mom worried when you were like, "Hey, mom, thanks for raising me. I know I just had this 20-year career in the military, but now I'm going to go off and do this."
My mom is my biggest supporter in the world, but she also looked at me and said, Jeff, you can take your 20 years and you
Yeah.
could go get a six-figure job contracting, doing something. What the hell are you doing, son? That's what I got. And a lot
Yeah.
of my family, and my brothers are like, what the hell? That's kind of cool though. Like bring back some cool beer, but you're not getting paid, dude. What the heck, man? A year after doing it, you're not getting paid, man. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
but they've been a huge support since day one.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's fun. But you are getting paid, right? I saw that you
Yeah,
invested in real estate and
yeah,
generated passive income for yourself. So I want to talk about that for a second because I don't know, underlying theme of people that we bring on the show and talk about real estate is an overwhelmingly successful vehicle that people travel in to achieve the freedom, right? To do this. So talk about the real estate investment path. How did you decide to do that? And, what is that like for you?
yeah. It was all by chance. Thank
Yeah.
God. Again, the military. You're able to move. You're able to go. So one of the things when I knew that I was going to Fort Bragg, to work with Special Operations Command there. I knew that was going to be an investment property. I was like, I am not going to live in North Carolina the rest of my life. So I did my homework. I said, okay, let's look at the demographic. Let's look at the schools. Let's look at what resale value is over the last 10 years, and do I want a house to 10 a yard? Do I want a condo? So all those questions came about, that I had. I ended up finding a great piece of property on the lake, really cheap, and doubled down on my payments. It was a,
Perfect.
and yeah, I knew it was going to be an investment property. So and again, it's just one of those things that I always thought wherever I moved, whether it was when I was at the 101st or at Fort Bragg, or elsewhere, it was look, let's figure out this investment piece, and see if I can make money because I know once I get out, that's something that I could use as passive income. I knew, I always thought about passive income and said, you know what, this will be a great addition to my military
Yeah.
retirement, right? Because again, I said, okay, if I'm making this amount for my retirement and this, I don't have to work, or I can take my time figuring out what I want to be when I grow up after
Mm-hmm.
the army, is what I always say. And that's always been my thought and my train of thought. I mean, look, when I came into the army in the beginning, back when I was an 18-year-old kid, I knew that that retirement pension was going to be there at a very young age, and that was a driving factor of me staying through. After 2, 3, 4, 5 years of combat, a lot of people are getting out. That was one of the major
Yeah.
driving factors of that retirement.
What got you into the military?
One of the things I didn't like school. I didn't, and my parents didn't have money for college. And what I thought was, well, I can go learn a trade that somebody's going to pay me. I can go learn leadership and these basic skills that could carry me forward. After 4 years, my goal was just to do 4 years and then get out. And then I had some money for college. But yeah, and that was the driving factor. My parents were poor and didn't have that, and they couldn't put me through college. great, right? Because I didn't want to go to college. So I always talk about playing. I got to go crawl around in the mud, shoot guns, blow stuff up, and for me, that was what I wanted to do instead of sitting behind a desk for 4 more years
Yeah.
and do that. So yeah, that was the reasons why.
And then 20 years later, there you are. All right. So let's get to where you are now. You spent 2 years traveling the globe, going to some incredible, a lot of the places you go to are, those places alone are like on people's bucket list to go to one of those places. Like, that's my dream trip. Sometime before I die, I'm going to go to this place. And yet you're here, you're there, you're there, you're there. You're on everybody's bucket list. I think that, you're doing it. So you spent 2 years doing that. And what do? You reach out to these wineries, these breweries, these businesses and say, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. Me and my camera guy want to come in and film and do this.
Barb, that's it. It's the art of selling,
Yeah.
We sell in everyday life. And that was the thing is, I was getting a lot of no's. I talk about it, any point of entry or whatever you're starting, anything, you got to prove yourself. And I think what was great about what I was doing, I read it's funny because Patrick Ben David, who you've had on, is a good friend of mine and a mentor. And as I was getting out, I was like, he recommended a book to read. It was called Blue Ocean Strategy. I don't know if you've ever read that, but that really made me understand the direction I needed to go with beer, wine, and spirits, because a red ocean is what everybody else is doing in the space. Well, I knew everybody was in either beer or either wine or either spirits and never done all three. Why? Because it's tough to learn all three at once, So, after reading the Blue Ocean Strategy, I was like, wow, that's exactly what I need to do. Then I'm going to show the process behind the scenes. So I'm a visual conceptual when it comes to learning. That's how I learn. I don't learn. You give me a book right now and I read it, I'm probably not going to be able to apply that.
Yep.
But I'm hands-on, then I'm better off at doing that. So I knew my learning capability already. Obviously, 20 years in the military taught me a lot about being self-aware. And so I knew that was the aspect and approach that I wanted to do with videography. The third thing was I needed to find somebody that could do, that style of work, hold the camera and have the same creative. And one of the interesting things I tell people is that I didn't just reach out to any videographer out there. I spent weeks and weeks, literally across all platforms, looking for somebody with the same creative that I had in filming travel. And that was like, I like their transitions. I like these shots. I like these drone shots. I'm like, wow, that's exactly how I would do it. And I reached out and I only found a few, and that was interesting to me, and I reached out to them. Also, I didn't have a budget to hire the best of the best. So it was these young, hungry kids to be able to
who
do
can
that.
pack up and travel the world with you for 2 years or whatever.
Yeah. And
that's the other part of it.
And want to do that, right? Yeah, exactly. And they're passionate about that too as well. And then I knew I had the creative. I knew going way back to when I was a kid, I was writing some great stories. I was writing in the third person at like 6 or 7. I was winning awards, a lot of awards that I had. So that was something going way back to childhood. But my grammar sucked, and I hated English. I hated grammar and all this stuff, but I could write a great story with a bunch of run-ons, right? So, and the funny thing is like, looking back, I actually stopped writing. I was like, I'm not good at this. I was good at writing on the creative aspect, but I wasn't good at the grammar. But here's the thing, I stopped. So what I saw with beer, wine, and spirits was I had this creative ability to tell these people's story. Don't ask me to write about it because you're going to red ink the crap out of that. But I was able to do that in a visual aspect. And that was something that I'm so glad that I tapped into, because I'm really starting to understand that I'm really good at this, and I'm getting better every day. And I actually I enjoy that process of it. And we started filming these amazing episodes from the start. And it was interesting because I don't have a following. I don't, when I first started, I had my brother and my mom following me, and that was pretty much it. And these companies were still saying yes, based off of the content and the different, way of storytelling. I wasn't swirling a glass, telling people this is how it tastes. They were like, you want to what? You want to come work with us and show that scene? And it was something new to them. And they were like, come on, let's come on and come in and film. And that's the advantage I had. And it was the niche again that nobody else was doing
Yeah.
Across it. And one yes, with the great content turned into two, turned into three, to now to big brands like, these bigger brands that you're seeing on TV and stuff that say, hey, Jeff, we would love for you to come out and tell our story.
That's so cool. So typically, how long would you be at one location?
Yeah, so great question. It all depends. One, it all depends on if I've been there or not, and I want to enjoy that. Like for me, Croatia was amazing,
Yeah.
and I stayed there a little over a month, probably just because I absolutely loved it. But wine, when I look across beer, wine, and spirits, like wine is one of those that takes the longest, to be able to make and show that process. So usually with wine, I'm there for a few weeks showing that because everything happens with in the vineyard, and a dark day or a rainy day might you want to wait until that time to pick the grapes and stuff like that. So wine for me it takes a little bit longer. Beer, obviously, they have everything on. We can make it that day. So it all depends on what I'm making, where I'm there, and literally what I try to do is I try to have at least 2 or 3 stories in a country that I'm going to already planned. So I already know I'm going to do that. And then when I get to the country is really deep diving with the locals and saying, okay, what story should I tell? What are the places that I should go? Because my goal when I leave that country is I want people from that country to say that guy got it right.
Yeah.
He picked the right things. Culturally, that's what we drink. He didn't go to those big name brands or this and that. He got the right people. And he told the right story from that country, and that's my ultimate goal. So
you are like the Anthony Bourdain. No, that is like Anthony Bourdain and what he did with food.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up because again, I love the shows. I watch. I mean, I followed him religiously, and it's sad. It's sad what happened to him. In that whole situation. But there's the reason why I study what he does is because he did it for very long and he wasn't going anywhere. And I always say, and that's the people I want to study from. I wanted to learn, and he brings that culture into it. He brings those stories into it. And it's something that I can look up to because again, I didn't have a manual. I didn't have anything to study from. I mean, who else is telling this and doing that? And he was the best and the biggest role model for me that I could look up to.
So what is the plan now for these shows? What platform are people going to be able to watch them on?
So again, right now it's funny that you say it, Barb, because I always tell people, I'm going on April, I'll be 2 years doing this. And I'm on YouTube because I think YouTube is so great. It gives
totally
creative idea. It gives these people that are creative this platform to be able to share your ideas with the world. But also, you got to understand that it's going to take some time to get off the island. I say that, and I love saying that because when you start something, literally, you're going to have all these tools to build this raft to be able to get off this island. You have social media, you have YouTube, you have all these tools. But don't think that you're going to put out this amazing episode like I did. I really thought I'm going to create this great content. I'm going to put it out and 1 million people are going to see it and boom.
Yes.
It's not going to happen that way. And it's going to take you quite a long time for people to understand what you're doing. And that was the big misconception from me, is I said, you know what, I'm going to make great content. I'm going to make the best product that I can. This is the niche nobody was doing. People are going to love that. First video comes out, 100, 200 views. And I'm like, what the heck is going on, man? And I studied the rules and read the YouTube books on how to get, thumbnail and title. Third video came out, 300 views, 400 views, and I'm learning, I'm better quality videos. I'm in my head, in my mind. And again, still the same. And, it's interesting because it took me 10 months to get a few thousand followers. And in the last 2 days, I picked up over 2,000 followers. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting. Yeah. It's very difficult at first to start something and get off the island to see what people see what you're actually.
Dude, you're speaking my language, man. I know. I know. That's, we're like living parallel lives, right?
Barb,
Um,
it's so, and that's the thing that's so tough about
yeah,
starting something like this. Mentally, it was tough, right? Here I am,
yeah,
6, 7 months into this, few hundred views. I'm putting my heart and soul into this. Uh, and nobody, I'm like, man, maybe this is not working. 6 months in, I'm already having that negative talk. And
right.
that was the moment where, I literally almost gave up. And I said, well, and I think a lot of people can relate to this because you're doing something that you're passionate, you love, but you're not getting the achievement or that
Yeah.
fulfillment that of what you're doing. You feel like you're working your tail off, and for what, and
Yeah.
literally, I almost felt like giving up.
And yeah, at some point it has to start paying for yourself. And was that must have been a giant contrast too, because in service, you have a daily sense of accomplishment. I mean, you have this mission, you go out, you achieve it, you can see what you're accomplishing, you have a purpose and you understand what that purpose is. And so you're struggling and you're hurting and you're sacrificing and you're going through all these things, but you know why. And so do other people. And now here you
Yeah,
are
no,
struggling
I
on your
agree, Barb.
own doubt, and so the fact that you powered through and now I feel that you are on the brink of some turning point. What you're on, what
Yeah,
you're doing is so cool and people are hungry for it. Like you said, not just for the beer, wine, and spirits, but for the story itself that you sold everything. You went off, you followed the dream, you're coming back, you have this great mindset, this great attitude. What about doing a tour through just American booze? I just came up with, then you could call it American spirits.
I love it. I love it,
you know,
Barb.
and
That's why
just
you
do
need a
it.
great. That's why you need a great team around you to
Yeah.
bounce ideas off each other. I love it.
Right.
Uh, so I am focusing a lot more this year on beer, wine, and spirits here in the United States. I'm actually working on that's why I'm here in San Diego. One, I'm, for proficiency, I'm learning about beer and going through a beer program here. Um, but I'm also talking about food pairing. I think it's
Genius.
very
Yeah.
interesting. One of the things I see traveling around the United States is breweries popping up all over. And what I want the conversation to come about is, we're, again, going back to community. And, we want to support the brewery in our community, and everything that our community has to offer. And what I looked at is when I go to a restaurant in, for example, San Diego, and I still get this wine list, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in San Diego, one of the beer capitals of the United States. Why am I not
I did not
hanging?
know that.
Yeah, and like, I'm wondering, why am I not getting a beer and a beer menu with this prepared with the foods? So the conversation is just, what do we got to do in the restaurant side of things, and for chefs to be able to create this beer and food pairing? Because what I know and what I understand is that when you compare food with drink, it's luxurious. It's something out of this world. I mean, your senses, it just smiling at you, right? And it's so cool. But we don't have to be so funneled into just wine. The
Yeah.
reason why is because society. I mean, we know that to be right. A lot of 20 years ago, a lot of people put a lot of time and effort to educating the consumer for food and wine. And I think it's about time that somebody takes an active step forward. And I know there's breweries doing food and wine, food and beer pairings and stuff. But I think with my platform, I would love to just bring that conversation to life, and talk about that amongst other things in the United States. I think an interesting story that I'm doing is I'm working on is going to New Zealand. They actually created a law for home distilling. Right, we here in the United States, it's banned, it's outlawed.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go over to New Zealand and talk about why did you guys put this law into place to be able to home distill. Because the way I see it is, if America was to do that, it's the same as how craft brewery came about in the late 70s when Carter said, hey guys, go out and home brew. People learned, people made a lot of mistakes, but the end result is what we have today, with all these people coming up with these amazing ideas and be able to learn from in their house, and to be able to apply that and share that information. And I think distilling should be the same way. So again, I'm just bringing up a lot of these conversations for people to talk about and
Yeah.
see. And there's some big brands that obviously can't name here, but that I'm going to be working with and telling the story
That's
of
great.
here in the United States too as well.
That's cool. Tequila goes well with beer.
It does, and I've been down there, and funny, I went down
I,
to
I, I
make
saw
tequila.
you,
Yeah.
saw you chopping that up. That was cool.
It's hard work, and
It
that's what's
looks
so
it.
cool.
Yeah.
That's what's so cool about. I get a lot of people telling me, man, like, oh, Jeff, it's so cool to see you doing the work, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. It's like the Mike Rowe of beer, wine, and
Yes.
spirits. That's
You're a little bit
another.
of everyone.
It's another
great.
show that I really love. I absolutely, I think Mike Rowe is absolutely amazing.
I know, me too. Me too. We dig him. So you're going to have this show, and at some point it's going to be out there everywhere, and it's going to be amazing.
Thanks.
Where was I just going to go with this? You learned some things along the way, though, and that's what I wanted to touch. You talk about the 6 Ps, and I want to get into that because this is all fun and good, right? But you're obviously somebody who this isn't just like a whim. This isn't some guy with a backpack. I'm going to go drink and get wasted and travel the world and all that. Like, it's a much deeper, almost like an artistic expression, for you, and something you're passionate about and you're bringing this to people. So it's not like you're going out there and you're like, hey, people, let's get sauced and let's see how many countries we can get drunk in and do that. It's not that kind of drinking, where the kind that, is going to derail you to success. Right. But like, what is something that you would want to say to people who are like, well, why wine? Like, what's the value in this?
Yeah,
why?
No, that's a great point. And really to go back, Barb, onto like you're talking about getting sauce, I think alcohol has such that negative, when you say the word alcohol, again, it's bad, and I understand the reasons why. And I want to bring to light that, what, it's so much about culture, customs, and we celebrate with it. And, you enjoy it on during sporting events. And, yeah, you can, after a hard day's work, days, worth of work, you can unwind with a glass of wine or a beer. I'm telling people, you know what? Let's educate you about how it is, but it's okay to do that. We have these sober Januaries and our Octobers and all. Why? Like, here's the real thing about it. Let's educate people and let's understand that, what? You have a choice, and it comes down to choice, right? To be able to do that and just understand the second and third order effects of your decision with alcohol. But I think if you make the choice, you can enjoy it. And I think it's so amazing. For me, it's something that I absolutely love to sit back with old Army buddies and talk about war stories over a beer, or sitting in the back porch on a Sunday thinking about my next moves with a glass of whiskey and having a peace of mind. I think that's the real essence of it, So that's an educational piece that I think needs to be brought to light, and I'm ready to have that conversation and challenge with other people that may think differently about alcohol.
Yeah, I love that.
But one of the things when I started Beer, Wine, and Spirits, again, I didn't, I just wanted to bring value in beer, wine, and spirits. And what I found out is that there was a lot of people messaging me, and I have quite a bit of following that might not be beer, wine, and spirits drinkers, right? They were just like, Jeff, your story is amazing. And I get questions all the time. How do you find your passion? How do you find your purpose? So it really brought to light, like, what am I learning? Like, what am I learning on this journey? Like getting out of the military and I came up with the 6 Ps. I did that for ease. I'm not the smartest guy, and I would not remember my own acronym if it was sounded like the alphabet, right? So I came up with the 6 Ps, and it starts with passion, And I always tell these young kids, they're like, "How do you find your passion?" And I'm saying, look, go try stuff, go do stuff, go try everything you can do, because you're going to find out really quick. Yes, I love this. Or you have that feeling like I did with beer, wine, and spirits, where like, wow, I can't wait to do this again, even after months and months and months of doing that. And another story I tell people about passion. Look, I have a nutrition science degree. I thought that I'm very passionate about it, but it's not my purpose. And that was my next thing I was telling people is like, I love nutrition. I got a degree in it, but when I woke up and do it, it's not the same as it was with beer, wine, and spirits. It was not this gut feeling, and just wanting to go out there and do it. And that's when I knew beer, wine, and spirits was my purpose, listening to my mind, my heart, and my gut on those things. And what I tell people is when you switch from that and your purpose, you have to go all in. You have to trust it. Now, mind you, you have to posture yourself to be able to do that. You have, daily expenses, you have life to live, and all that. Go all in, and that was my second P of the six P's. The third P in that is proficiency. Look, I've been doing this for 2 years. People are starting to ask me what about this, and I can't just. I don't. You got to learn and become a master at this craft. And if you love it and you're passionate about it, you can't wait to learn and study and understand it. But I think proficiency is a big thing, and I'm always learning about beer, wine, and spirits. It's overwhelming at times, not going to lie, but at the end of the day, I can't wait to open up a book and learn about it and become more proficient and bring back as much value as I can to people out there, globally. Next one. So we got three. We got passion, purpose, proficiency, and the next one I say pain. And this one really drives home to me and suffering. I think when you start something like this, you're gonna suffer. You're gonna have pain. You're gonna feel like quitting. And one thing that I have an edge on, that being in the military, is that I went through a lot of schools. I went through a lot of pain and a lot of struggling and stuff like that. And I learned a lot about myself. And you're gonna go through that. You're gonna feel like giving up. And I always tell people to always. There's a voice in my head. Even today, and I'm sure I'm sure you can relate, Barb. You're still gonna be there's still times my mind, even this morning, was like, Jeff, what are you doing? Like, come on, really go travel the world. You don't need to be doing this. And I have to have that positive voice built in to shut that negative voice out. But understand that you're gonna have pain, and you're always gonna have pain through this, the peaks and valleys. And that's what really makes that journey extra special. The next one after pain is partnerships. I tell people my beer, wine, and spirits channel would be cool, but I tell you what, I wouldn't gain the success and of what I'm doing without these amazing and creative videographers that could take my wild and crazy ass ideas and make them into stuff that the people out there are watching. I couldn't do this without them. And I wouldn't be here today without them. And that, even looking back at the military, right? I mean, the success, everything comes, off the people to your left and to your right. So team, partnerships are key for me. And the last one, we hit on about the island, is patience. When I started this, I thought I was going to have that viral moment, 6 months making great videos. Thought I was going to have this amazing thing kick off. And I almost gave up after 8 months, almost a year. That's a long time. But if in reality, it's just a blink of the eye. And I think about it every day now. Here I am, again, just 22 months into this, but I'm having the most people, the most viewers, the people coming to me, telling me how amazing it is, more opportunities than I ever have before. And I always think about, if I would have gave up at month 8, I would have never known the successes that I would have, 3 months after that. So patience, just have patience.
Yeah. And that's a good point you made. If you'd given up the one day, you would never know, right? A lot of people stop when you're almost there, right? It's just like, if they had just gone over one more hill, they would have made it, but they'll never know because they stop, which is sad and unfortunate. But a lot of people give up, and it's hard. You gotta really want it. You gotta believe in it. You gotta find a way to make everything else work and juggle. And like you said, the negative noise and what people are saying, well, you're not getting paid yet. You didn't monetize this yet. Like, dude, back off. Like, I'm becoming great as fast as I can.
Yeah. Brene Brown said something that was really interesting, was that, without even the negativity, you're going to get it. And I get it. And the more and more you grow, the more and more you're going to get that,
yes,
that negativity. And one thing I really was amazing to hear was that, remember, you're in the arena, they're in the seats. Right. You're the one in the arena doing this, and that for me is so powerful. And I tell myself that every single day.
And you know what I have found, and I feel like you're going to agree with this too. It's the people, whatever you're doing, you strike out, you have delays, you have this or that. It's never the people who are also out there doing their own thing and taking their own risks and doing that, who look at you and say, oh, dude, you're not here yet. Those people are always like, man, it takes balls to do what you're doing, rock on, you're going to get there. And it's everyone who has never tried anything who is most critical, I think, like you just said. Same thing. All right. I know we're going to wrap this up here. But I want to ask you the question, because at American Snippets, we talk a lot about the American dream, right? Patriotism is important to us, vastly important to us. But we know the American dream is something different for everyone. We believe it's alive and well. It's important to us. We got tired of hearing people knock it, complain about this country, blame it for their own lack of fulfillment. We knew that there's a lot of people out there doing great and unusual and unique things with their lives like you are, right? But we think the key is that the American dream is different for everybody. It's not a cookie cutter version that you have to have the white picket fence and the family and all that. So I want to ask you, how would you define your own American dream?
Yeah, it's having these, for me, it was having these crazy and wild idea and dreams and be able to make that come alive. I travel the world, and that's why so many people come to America, because America wants and allows you to do that, and for me, that's the dream. Is I could sit here and say, I love beer, wine, and spirits. I want to bring value to the world, and I could take that idea and then I can make that a reality, and I can make that a reality through hard work, dedication, through the 6 P's that I talked about, to make that my dream and make that come alive.
Love it. Thank you. So if people want to find you online, follow what you're doing, talk to you about sponsoring you, what you're doing, invite you to their brewery or their facility, how do they go about finding you and connecting with you?
Yeah. Well, first I would say, please go to my YouTube channel. It's Beer, Wine, and Spirits, and let me know how I'm doing. I love feedback. I love when people tell me, hey, do this or try this or go to this brewery or try this brewery. So yeah, go to YouTube and please let me know how I'm doing there. If you want to follow my day-to-day, Instagram right now is where I'm at beer_wine_spirits. And then at Facebook, I throw videos up there every now and then at Jeff Bradford, Beer, Wine, and Spirits.
Awesome. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. I'm super excited to see where you're going, continue following you, and be able to say that we were one of the first people who caught you early.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Thank you so much, Barb. I really appreciate that.
I think you're going to look back on this interview someday and be like, oh my God, that's where I started. Or whatever. That was the interview, or whatever. But it's all good. It's great. Thank you so much.